Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Newton Theater Company pre-show show. We are broadcasting live tonight from your neighborhood bar. It's probably just a few blocks from your house. My name's Neil. I will be your piano player this evening. And pull up a chair and make yourself comfortable. The year is 1940-something. That last song was Stompin' at the Savoy by the Benny Goodman Orchestra. Has everyone dancing these days. Here's something else for you. Thank you. Man, we're filling up here. That song was Besame Mucho, which means kiss me a lot. Here's something from Duke Ellington. So his latest hit. Once again, we are broadcasting live tonight from your neighborhood bar. The Newton Theater Company is getting ready for tonight's performance of Rebecca, a tale of love, power, and evil. The book was written by Daphne du Maurier and made into a classic film by Alfred Hitchcock. But first, here's a new song that looks like it will be a big hit for Nat King Cole. It's Nature Boy, written by Eden Abels. And here's something. There's a popular group that's out now with lots of hits. This is the Ink Spots. This is their new tune. For all you coffee drinkers here, that's hit is Java Jive. I'd like to take a a moment here to talk about the context of this music, what's going on today. The 40s was the era of the big bands when dance music and jazz fused together to explode in a bunch of hits. Jazz is really a gift from the black traditions to our American music culture. But most of the bands in the day were segregated and played to segregated audiences. There were some band leaders who integrated their bands, including Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Duke Ellington. But they were blackballed in large swaths of the United States after doing that. And where they could perform, even the most successful black artists tell stories of the indignities and dangers that they faced on the road. And unfortunately, these conditions did not change much in the 1950s. And in the 60s and later, racism in the music world did not end. My final tune tonight comes from the excellent pianist, composer, arranger, band leader, statesman, and promoter of peace, Mr. Duke Ellington. Also a promoter of mass transit. This is Take the A-Train. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Zoom Radio Hour. It's my pleasure to introduce the artistic director of the Newton Theater Company, Miss Melissa Bernstein.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Neil. I'm Melissa Bernstein, the artistic director of Newton Theater Company. Welcome to our Zoom Radio Hour. Tonight we'll be presenting Rebecca, that 1940 noir classic. If Zoom conks out on us, we do not think it will, but if it does, go to our website, newtontheatercompany.com, and we will put up a link to a taped dress rehearsal. As always, we hope this finds you feeling well and safe. Newton Theater Company stands with Black Lives Matter. As a troupe, we are committed to challenging ourselves. We know we can do more. We're a small fringe theater company, so we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here, being present with us here tonight. A special thank you to anyone who has made a donation to our theater company and anyone planning on making a donation to our theater company. It's your donations that keep our theater running. I'm blessed to work with a wonderful, generous, and talented group of actors, and our newest addition, Neil Miller, who composed the score for our play. Neil and I have been working together for over a decade, and I'm thrilled to have him part of this production. And This is personal, a special shout out to my sister and the love of her life, her dog Jasper. And now I'd like to introduce you to Eric Lass, our resident bartender. Take it away, Eric.
Thanks, Melissa. Tonight we're going to be making a dark and stormy. This is a drink that was invented over 100 years ago in Bermuda and was so successful that the company Goslings, who made the rum, actually trademarked the name. And we will be using Goslings Black Seal rum tonight. It's a great drink for summer and especially good if you find yourself in a British seaside manor, which our characters will tonight. All right, to the drink. We have lime juice, fresh squeezed, about 3/4 of an ounce. We have 1 shot or about 1.5 ounces of Gosling's Black Seal rum. It's important to get a dark rum. And we have ginger beer. And if you really want this drink to sing, you'll want to go out and get some specialty ginger beer and not necessarily use the ginger ale you have at home. Let's make our drink. We start with a glass about half filled with ice. We add our lime juice. We add our Black Seal rum. And we're going to use, maybe 5 ounces of ginger beer here. We're going to give it a quick stir. Don't want to use up all these beautiful bubbles. And we have a garnish of a little bit of lime. Let's give it a taste. Ooh, that's good. A drink is intriguing as it is enticing, just like the characters in our show. And now over to you, Alfred Hitchcock.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Alfred Hitchcock, and I am delighted to be here tonight to introduce you to another evening of exceptional theater by the Newton Theater Company. Tonight's production is Rebecca, a real cliffhanger of mine that is both a love story lost and found, and a ghost story too. Boo. If you enjoy high-quality theater, as do our community sponsors, the Village Bank, Wegmans, and your neighbors who are already friends of NTC, help support more by donating on our website, www.newtontheatrecompany.com. And now, sit back and enjoy your dark and stormy as NTC brings you Rebecca.
Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gates leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. Then, like all dreamers, I was possessed of a sudden with supernatural powers, and passed like a spirit through the barrier before me. The drive wound away in front of me, twisting and turning, and finally there was Manderley. Manderley, secretive and silent. Time could not mar the perfect symmetry of those walls, but I knew I looked upon an empty, desolate shell with no whisper of the past in its daring, blackened windows. We can never go back to Manderley again. That much is certain. But sometimes in my dreams I do go back to the strange days of my life, which began for me in the south of France. There, on a great cliff towering above the sea, I first saw him. He was looking down, staring at the rocks below. And then, suddenly, I thought I saw him about to... No, stop! Stop!
What the devil are you shouting about? Who are you? What are you staring at?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare, but you were so close to the edge of the cliff, I was afraid that...
Oh, you were? Well, what are you doing here?
I was only walking. I came up the path and I...
Well, go on with your walking. Don't just hang about here screaming. Go on!
I'll never come to Monte Carlo out of season again. Not a single well-known personality in the hotel. This coffee's stone cold. Waiter! Garçon!
I don't believe he can hear you, Mrs. Van Hopper.
Well, get him! Get him! What are you being paid for, girl? You... Oh. Why, that's Max de Winter. Look. See him coming this way? What are you looking so surprised about?
I saw him today on the cliff.
Oh. Mr. de Winter! How do you do?
How do you do?
I'm Edith Van Hopper. Do you remember me? It's so nice to run into you here. Do sit down and have some coffee. My dear, Mr. de Winter's having some coffee with me. You may go.
Of course.
I'm afraid I must contradict you. You shall both have coffee with me. Garçon, un café, s'il vous plaît?
You know, I recognized you just as soon as you came in. Are you playing the tables much here at Monty?
Oh, no, I'm afraid that sort of thing ceased to amuse me years ago.
Oh, I can well understand that. If I had a home like Manderley, I should certainly never come to Monty. I hear it's one of the biggest places in that part of the country, and you just can't beat it for beauty.
Cigarette? Mrs. Van Hopper?
Oh, thank you.
And you?
Oh, no, thank you.
So, what do you think of Monte Carlo? Or don't you think of it at all?
Well, I think it's rather artificial.
She's spoiled, Mr. de Winter. That's her trouble. Most girls would give their eyes for the chance to see Monty.
Wouldn't that rather defeat the purpose?
Now that we found each other again, I do hope I shall be seeing something of you. Your valet's unpacked for you, I suppose.
I'm afraid I don't possess one. Perhaps you'd like to do it for me.
This young lady might make herself useful. She's a capable child in many ways. Aren't you, dear?
Mrs. Van Hopper.
It's a charming suggestion, but I'm afraid I cling to the old motto, he travels fastest who travels alone. Perhaps you've not heard of it. Good night.
Well, what do you make of that? Do you suppose that sudden departure was intended to be funny? Or perhaps he didn't quite realize how it looked? Poor thing. I suppose he just can't get over his wife's death. They say he simply adored her.
When I came alone to the dining room the following day, he was already there at the next table. As I sat down, I paid the penalty of my awkwardness. I knocked over a vase of flowers, the water soaking the cloth. Oh, what a stupid thing to do.
Oh, mademoiselle, your table is wet. You will have lunch with me.
Oh no, I couldn't possibly.
Why not?
Oh, well, please don't be polite. It's very kind
I
of
was
you, but...
being polite. I should have asked you to have lunch with me even if you hadn't been so clumsy. Sit down. We needn't talk to each other if we don't feel like it.
Well, thank you very much.
So, what's happened to your friend?
Oh, she's ill in bed with a cold.
Oh, I am sorry that I was rude to you yesterday. The only excuse I can offer is that I have become boorish through living alone.
You weren't really. You just wanted to be by yourself.
Tell me, is Mrs. Van Hopper a friend or just a relation?
No, she's my employer. I'm what is known as a paid companion.
I didn't know that companionship could be bought. Is that a sketching book? Do you sketch?
Yes, a little.
Were you going sketching this afternoon?
Yes.
Where?
Oh, I haven't made up my mind.
Well, I'll take you somewhere in the car.
Oh no, please don't.
Nonsense, nonsense. Order your lunch and we'll get along. You have been taking quite a long time with that sketch. I shall expect a very fine work of art.
You're not a very easy subject. Your expression keeps changing all the time.
Does it? Well, I'd focus on the view instead if I were you. It's much more worth the while. Rather reminds me of our coastline at home. Do you know Cornwall at all?
Oh, yes. Yes, I went there once on a holiday. I was in a shop there, and I saw a postcard with a beautiful house on it right by the sea. And I asked whose house it was, and the old lady said, "That's Manderley."
Yes, Manderley. It is beautiful. But to me, it's just the place where I was born and the place that I've lived all my life. No, I don't suppose I should ever see it again.
Oh, well, we're lucky not to be home during the bad weather, aren't we? I can't ever remember enjoying swimming in England until June, can you? But the water's so warm here I could stay in all day. There's a dangerous undertow, and there was a man drowned here last year, but I never had any fear of drowning, have you?
Why did you say that?
Have I said something wrong? I didn't mean to.
Come along. I'll take you home.
That night, I learned the reason for his strangeness. I was late getting back to the hotel. As I opened the door of Mrs. Van Hopper's suite, I heard her talking to someone on the telephone.
Oh, yes, I knew him quite well. I knew his wife, too. She was the beautiful Rebecca Hildreth, you know, the most glamorous creature in all England. She was drowned, poor thing, while she was sailing near Manderley.
I am glad it cannot happen twice, the fever of first love. For it is a fever and a burden, too. I have forgotten much of Monte Carlo, of those morning drives with him, of where we went and what we said. But I have not forgotten how I trembled as I sat beside him. You know, I wish there could be an invention that bottled up the memory like perfume, and then, whenever I wanted to, I could uncork the bottle and live the memory all over again.
And what particular moment of your life would you like to keep?
Oh, all of them. All of these last few days.
You know, sometimes those little bottles contain demons that have a way of popping out at you just as you're trying most desperately to forget.
Yes, of course. Would you please tell me, Mr. De Winter, why you asked me to come out with you? It's obvious that you want to be kind, but why do you choose me for your charity?
I asked you to come out with me because I want to blot out the past for me more than all the bright lights of Monte Carlo. But if you think I just asked you out of kindness or charity, well, you can get out of the car. Find your own way home. Go on. Open the door. Get out.
Thank you, Mr. De Winter.
Please don't call me Mr. De Winter. I have a very impressive array of first names. George, Fortescue, Maximilian. Well, you needn't bother with all of them at once. My family call me Maxim. Come in! Come in! Oh. Oh. Hello. What are you doing here? Is anything the matter?
I've come to say goodbye, Maxim. We're going away.
What on earth are you talking about?
But it's true. We're going now, and I was afraid I wouldn't see you again.
Where is she taking you to?
Piscataway, New Jersey, to see a relative of hers. Oh, Maxim, I don't want to go. I shall hate it. I shall be miserable.
Tell me something. Which would you prefer? Piscataway or Manderley?
Oh, please don't joke about it. Mrs. Van Hopper's waiting, and I'd better say goodbye now.
I'll repeat what I said. Either you go to America with Mrs. Van Hopper, or you come home to Manderley with me.
You mean you want a secretary or something?
I'm asking you to marry me.
Marry you?
Well, my suggestion doesn't seem to have gone at all well. I'm sorry.
Oh, but you don't understand. It's that well, I'm not the sort of person men marry.
What on earth do you mean?
I don't belong in your sort of world, for one thing.
What is my sort of world?
Well, Manderley. Oh, you know what I mean.
Well, I'm the best judge of whether you belong there or not. Of course, if you don't love me, that's a different thing. A fine blow to my conceit. That's all.
I do love you. I love you most dreadfully. I've been crying all morning because I thought I'd never see you again.
Well, bless you for that. I'll remind you of this one day. And you won't believe me.
I was afraid to tell Mrs. Van Hopper, for I knew what she would say. When we were alone, she congratulated me. But I didn't like her smile.
But of course you know why he's marrying you, don't you? The fact is, that empty house got on his nerves. He just couldn't go on living alone. You haven't flattered yourself that he's in love with you, I hope. Not after being married to Rebecca Hildreth, the most beautiful, the most cultured woman in all England? Well, goodbye and good luck, Mrs. De Winter.
We were married that evening in a little village near the sea, and in May we came to Manderley. We arrived early in the evening. It was raining as we drove through the high iron gates. The drive twisted and turned as a serpent, and then suddenly, there was the house, Manderley, a thing of grace and beauty, and yet somehow almost frightening. As we came into the great hall, I saw that it was crowded with people, the staff of the house and the estate. They stood silent and curious, gazing at me. And then someone advanced from the sea of faces. She was tall and gaunt, dressed in deep black, and her prominent cheekbones and hollow eyes gave her a sort of skull's face.
This is Mrs. Danvers. You don't have to worry about the house at all, darling. Mrs. Danvers takes care of everything.
Good evening, Mrs. Danvers.
Good evening, madam. I have everything in readiness for you.
Oh, that's very good of you.
Will you go to your room now, madam, or will you have tea in the library?
Why, I don't think I...
Mrs. Danvers.
Yes, sir. This way, if you please, madam. I hope you'll approve the new decorations of these rooms, madam.
Oh, I didn't know that they'd been changed. What did it look like before?
It had an old paper and different hangings. It was never used much, except for occasional visitors.
Oh, then it wasn't Mr. De Winter's room originally?
No, madam. He has never used the east wing before. The only good view of the sea is from the west wing.
The room's very charming, and I'm sure that I shall be comfortable.
If there's anything you want done, madam, you only have to tell me.
Mrs. Danvers, I suppose you've been at Manderley for many years.
I came here when the first Mrs. De Winter was a bride.
I do hope we'll be friends, Mrs. Danvers. But you must be patient with me. This sort of life is new to me, and I do want to make a success of it and to make Mr. De Winter happy. So I know that I can leave all the household arrangements to you.
I hope I shall do everything to your satisfaction, madam. I have managed the house since Mrs. De Winter's death, and Mr. De Winter has never complained.
I think I'll go downstairs now.
Certainly, madam. The room in the West Wing I was telling you about is there, through that door. It's not used now. It's the most beautiful room in the house. The only room that looks down across the lawn to the sea. It was Mrs. De Winter's room.
I knew even then that Mrs. Danvers despised me, standing there watching me, laughing silently at my awkwardness, telling me over and over that there had been another before me, the beautiful Rebecca Hildreth. There was everything to remind me of that. The letter R embroidered on the linens, her writing paper in the drawers of the desk, her dog who still slept outside her room. She was everywhere at Manderley. Rebecca, who had died, and who still wandered through that house. I met someone else the next morning when I came down to breakfast.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
You're Mrs. De Winter, aren't you?
Yes?
My name's Crawley. I manage the estate for Maxim. Awfully glad to meet you.
How do you do?
Fearful lots of stuff piled up while Maxim was away.
Yes, I'm sure there must have been. I do wish I could help you with some of it.
Help him? Frank never allows anybody to help him. Like an old mother hen with his bills and rents and taxes. Come on, Frank. We must go over these estimates.
I'll get my papers.
You will find quantities of breakfast over there, darling. But you must eat it all, or the cook will be mortally offended.
I'll do my best, Maxim.
Later on this afternoon, maybe, we'll take a walk around the estate. Just you and I, darling. There's a good deal I'd like you to see.
I'll be ready, Maxim. Anytime.
Come along, Jasper! Come along! Oh, Jasper! Keep that shawl up around you, dear.
It isn't raining now, Maxim, must I?
Certainly. Certainly.
Oh, it's glorious here. I love every foot of it, Maxim.
Jasper! Jasper, here! Not that way. Jasper! Come back!
He went down those steps by the cliff. Where does that lead to?
It leads to a little cove where we used to keep a boat.
Let's go down there.
No, dear. It's a perfectly dull and uninteresting stretch of sand, just like any other.
Oh, please, Maxim.
Some other time, darling. Not today.
Listen, is that Jasper? There must be something wrong. Perhaps he's hurt himself.
No, he's all right. Leave him alone, dear.
But I think I'd better go and see.
No. Come back. Don't bother about him. Oh, I tell you, he can't come to any harm. He'll find his own way back.
Jasper! Jasper! Jasper? Oh, there you are. What do you want in that cottage, Jasper? Come on home. Come on, Jasper.
He comes here looking for her.
Oh, I didn't know there was anybody.
I know that dog. He comes from the house. He ain't your dog.
No, he's Mr. De Winter's dog.
I know that dog. He comes here looking for her.
Who? Whose cottage is this?
Mrs. De Winter.
Oh. Come here, Jasper.
You won't tell anyone. I've been here, will ya?
Don't you belong on the estate?
Yeah, but I weren't doing nothing. I just putting me shells away. She She's gone in the sea, ain't she? She'll never come back. No more.
No, she'll never come back. Come on, Jasper. Come on, boy. Maxim? Maxim! Here I am! Wait! Oh, Maxim, I'm sorry I was such a time.
You knew I didn't want you to go there, but you deliberately went.
Well, why not? There was only a cottage down there and a strange man.
Well, don't go there again. Do you hear?
Well, why not?
Because I hate that place. And if you had my memories, then you wouldn't go there or talk about it or even think about it.
What's the matter? Oh, I'm sorry, Maxim.
We should have stayed away. We should never have come back to Manderley. What a fool I was.
Oh, I've made you unhappy. Somehow I've hurt you. I can't bear to see you like this because I love you so much.
Do you? Do you? Forgive me. I sometimes seem to fly off the handle for no reason at all, don't I? Come. We'll go home and have some tea and forget all about it.
Yes. Let's forget all about it. The weather was wet and cold for almost a week, and we didn't go down to the beach again. But I couldn't forget the dark, lost look in Maxim's eyes when we came up the path through the woods. It was my fault. I had gone down to that cottage. I seemed to have opened up a road into the past, and now, because of it, there was a barrier between us. I began to dread any mention of the sea, until one morning in the library, I was alone with Frank Crawley.
Oh, but you're not disturbing me, Mrs. De Winter. Please, if there's something I can explain about the estate.
Well, I was down at the cottage on the beach the other day, Mr. Crawley. The place seems to be going to rack and ruin. Are those all Rebecca's things down there?
Yes. Yes, they are.
What did she use the cottage for?
The boat used to be moored down there.
The boat? Oh, was that the boat that she was sailing in when she drowned?
Yes, it capsized and sank, and she was washed overboard.
Where did they find her?
Near Edgecombe, about 40 miles up the channel. About 2 months later, Maxim went up to identify her. It was horrible for him.
Yes, it must have been. Mr. Crawley, please don't think me morbidly curious, but would you answer just one more question?
If it's something I'm able to answer.
Tell me, what was Rebecca really like?
Oh, I suppose she was the most beautiful creature I ever saw.
Maxim had to go up to London at the end of June, some business of the estate. Frank Crawley had gone along with him, and I was alone at Manderley. I was surprised one evening to hear voices coming from the west wing, from the room that had been Rebecca's. I recognized one as Mrs. Danvers. The other's was a man's voice, a stranger.
I really don't think it was wise for you to come here, Mr. Jack.
Oh, nonsense, nonsense. It's been just like coming back home. Though I must say I feel a little like the poor relations sneaking around through back doors. Well, toodaloo, Danny.
Goodbye, Mr. Jack, and please be careful.
I will, don't worry. Oh, hello.
Good evening.
Danny, all your precautions were in vain. The mistress of the house was hiding behind the door.
Oh, I wasn't really. I heard
What about
voices.
presenting me to the bride, Danny?
This is Mr. Jack. Farewell, madam.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Won't you have some tea or something?
Now, isn't that a charming invitation? I've been asked to stay to tea, Danny.
It's rather late.
Oh, well, perhaps you're right. And we mustn't lead the young bride astray, must we? Well, goodbye. Oh, and I know what was wrong with our introduction. Danny didn't tell you, did she? I'm Rebecca's favorite cousin. Toodaloo.
The man went quickly down the stairs, and Mrs. Danvers went after him. I had a terrifying impulse to see what lay behind the door in front of me, the door to Rebecca's room. I pushed it open slowly. I could hear the sea plainly through the window. I had expected to see the furniture swathed in dust sheets, but nothing was covered up. There were flowers on the dressing table, a satin dressing gown on the chair, and beneath a pair of bedroom slippers. And then, suddenly, the door closed behind me.
Do you wish anything, madam?
No, I just came in.
You've always wanted to see this room, haven't you? Why have you never asked me to show it to you? It's a lovely room, isn't it? The most beautiful you've ever seen. Everything is kept just as Mrs. De Winter liked it. Nothing has been altered since that last night. This is where I kept her clothes. You would like to see them, wouldn't you? Feel that silk dress. It was a Christmas present from Mr. De Winter. He was always buying her expensive gifts the whole year round. You wouldn't think she'd been gone so long, would you? Sometimes, when I walk along the corridor, I fancy I hear her just behind me. That quick, light step, I couldn't mistake it anywhere. It's not only in this room, it's in all the rooms in the house. I can almost hear it now. Do you think the dead come back and watch the living?
No, I don't believe that.
Sometimes I wonder if she doesn't come back here to Manderley and watch you and Mr. De Winter together. Oh, you look tired. Why don't you stay here a while and rest? Listen to the sea. It's so soothing, isn't it?
No.
Listen to the sea. Listen to it.
I won't listen. I won't. Maxim, I'm so glad you're home again.
Well, what have you been doing with yourself?
Oh, darling, I've been thinking. Could we have a costume ball just as you used to?
Now, what's put that idea into your mind?
Oh, nothing. I just feel that we ought to do something to make people feel that Manderley is the same as it always was. Oh, please, darling, can't we?
All right, if you think you'd enjoy it. You'd better get Mrs. Danvers to help you, hadn't you?
No, I don't need Mrs. Danvers to help me. I can do it by myself, Maxim.
Oh, all right, my sweet. I'm sure you can.
But Mrs. Danvers did help me. It was she who suggested that I design my costume after one of the family portraits in the gallery. A lovely young woman in a beautiful dress with a cream stole. When the night of the party arrived, I could hardly contain myself for excitement, for I'd kept the costume as a surprise for Maxim. I ran quickly down the stairs, and then I waited for the clapping and the laughter that would greet me. Suddenly, they were all quiet. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. And then Maxim was coming towards me, his face white, his eyes blazing.
What the devil do you think you're doing?
Maxim, it's the picture, the one in the gallery. What have I done?
Go and take it off. Go and take it off. It doesn't matter what you put on. Anything will do. What are you standing there for? Go and take it off!
May I help you with another costume, madam?
No. No, thank you, Mrs. Danvers.
Mr. De Winter was upset. I watched you just now, madam. I watched you go down the stairs just as I watched her a year ago. Even in the same mink stole, you couldn't compare with her.
The same stole? You knew it. You knew that she wore it, and yet you deliberately suggested I wear it. Why do you hate me? What have I done to you that you should hate me so?
You tried to take her place. You let him marry you. Oh, I've seen his face. His eyes, they're the same as those first weeks after she died. I used to listen to him, walking up and down all night long, night after night, thinking of her, suffering torture because he'd lost her.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
You thought you could be Mrs. De Winter, live in her house, walk in her steps, take the things that were hers, but she's too strong for you. You can't fight her. No one ever got the better of her. Never, never. She was beaten in the end. But it wasn't a man, it wasn't a woman. It was the sea.
Oh, stop it. Stop. Stop
Oh,
it.
Dear, you're overwrought. You're overwrought, madam. I'll open a window. A little air will do you good. Come stand here, madam. Now. Don't be afraid. Look. Down there. Isn't the sea lovely? Why don't you go? Why don't you leave Manderley? He doesn't need you. He has his memories. You've nothing to stay for. You've nothing to live for, really. Look, down there. It's easy, isn't it? Why don't you? Why don't you? Don't be afraid. Why don't you jump?
What is it? What's that noise? Maxim? Maxim! Maxim, where are you? Maxim? What is it, Frank? What's happened?
A shipwreck! There's a ship aground. We sent rockets. The Coast Guard is with them now.
Frank, have you seen Maxim on the beach?
Not since a half hour ago.
He hasn't been in the house all night. I'm afraid something might have happened to him. Frank, what's the matter? You look terribly worried.
Well, the diver who went down to inspect the bottom of the ship came across the hull of another boat. A little sailboat.
Frank, is it?
Yes, it's Rebecca's boat.
Rebecca's? Oh, why did they have to find it? Why couldn't they have left it there in peace at the bottom of the sea? Poor Maxim, it'll be so hard on him.
Yes, it's going to bring it all back again. And worse than before.
I searched the beach frantically for Maxim, but there was no sign of him. Then suddenly I came upon the boathouse, Rebecca's cottage. There was a light burning dimly in the window. I pushed open the door, and there, in the glow of the dying fire, I saw the tortured face of Maxim.
Hello? Come in.
Maxim! Maxim, you haven't had any sleep. Have you forgiven me?
Forgiven you?
For last night, for my stupidity about the costume.
Oh, that. I'd forgotten.
Oh, Maxim, can't we start all over again? I don't ask that you should love me. I won't ask impossible things. But I'll be your friend and companion. I'll be happy with that.
You love me very much, don't you? But it is too late, my darling. We've lost our little chance at happiness.
No, Maxim, no.
Yes, it is all over now. Rebecca has won. Her shadow has been between us all the time, keeping us from one another. She knew this would happen.
What are you saying?
They sent a diver down. He found another boat.
I know, Rebecca's boat.
Yes. The diver made another discovery. He broke one of the ports and looked into the cabin, and there was a body in there.
Body? Then she wasn't alone? There was someone sailing with her?
No, you don't understand. There was no one with her. It's Rebecca's body lying down there.
No. No!
The woman that washed up on Edgecombe, the woman that is now buried in the family crypt, that was not Rebecca. That was the body of some unknown woman, unclaimed, belonging nowhere. I identified it, but I knew it wasn't Rebecca. I knew where Rebecca's body was, lying on that cabin floor on the bottom of the sea.
Maxim, how did you know?
Because I put it there.
You? You?
Will you look me in the eyes and tell me that you love me now?
Oh, Maxim!
You see, I was right. It is too late.
No, it's not too late. You're not to say that. We can't lose each other now. We must be together always. Always.
I may only have a few hours, a few days.
Oh, Maxim, why didn't you tell me before?
Sometimes I nearly did, but you never seemed close enough.
How could we be close when I knew you were always thinking of Rebecca? How could I even ask you to love me when I knew that you loved Rebecca still?
What are you talking about? You thought that I loved Rebecca. I hated her.
Hated her?
Oh, I was carried away by her, enchanted by her, as everyone was. But I never had a moment's happiness with her. She was incapable of love or tenderness or decency.
You didn't love her?
Remember that cliff where you first saw me in Monte Carlo? Well, I went there with Rebecca on our honeymoon, and that's where I found out about her. 4 days after we were married. And she stood there, laughing. Her black hair was blowing in the wind, and she told me all about herself. Things I will never tell a living soul. I wanted to kill her. I'll make a bargain with you, she said. You'd look rather foolish trying to divorce me now after 4 days of marriage. So I'll play the part of the devoted wife, mistress of your precious Manderley, and people will visit us and envy us and say we're the luckiest, happiest couple in the country. Well, what a grand joke it will be! What a triumph! And I should never have accepted her dirty bargain, but I did, and I kept it, and so did she, apparently. But after a while, she began to grow careless. She took a flat in London, and she'd stay away for days at a time, and then she started to bring her friends down here, and I warned her, but she only shrugged her shoulders. And then there was that cousin of hers, a man named Favell.
Yes, I know him. He came the day you went to London.
Why didn't you tell me?
I didn't like to. I thought it would remind you of Rebecca.
Remind me, as if I needed reminding? Favell used to visit her, here, in this cottage. I found out about it, and I warned her that if she came here again, I'd shoot them both. And one night when I found out that she'd come back quietly from London, I thought Favell was with her. I decided to come down here and have it out with both of them, but she was alone. She was lying on the divan. She looked ill, queer, and suddenly she got up. She started to walk toward me. When I have a child, she said, neither you nor anyone else can ever prove it wasn't yours. You'd like to have an heir, wouldn't you, Max, for your precious Manderley? And then she started to laugh. How funny, she said. I'll be the perfect mother, just as I've been the perfect wife. And no one will ever know. And she was face to face with me, and she was smiling. Well, Max, what are you going to do about it? Aren't you going to kill me? And I suppose I went mad for a moment. I must have struck her. She stood there staring at me. She looked almost triumphant. And then she started towards me again, smiling, and suddenly she stumbled and fell. When I looked down, ages afterward, it seemed she was lying on the floor. She'd struck her head on a heavy piece of ship's tackle, and I remember wondering why she was still smiling. And then I realized she was dead.
But you didn't kill her. It was an accident.
Who would believe me? I lost my head. I knew I had to do something, anything. I carried her out to the boat. I put her in the cabin, and when the boat seemed a safe distance from shore, I took a spike and I drove it again and again into the planking of the hull. And I opened up the seacocks, and the water began to come in fast, and I climbed over the dinghy and pulled away, and then I saw the boat keel over and sink. And then it started to rain.
Maxim, does anyone else know of this?
No one.
Then we must explain it. It's got to be the body of someone you've never seen before.
No, they're bound to know her. Her rings, her bracelets, she always wore them. They'll identify her body, and then they'll remember that other woman. The other woman buried in the crypt.
Maxim.
I've done a very selfish thing in marrying you. I've loved you, my darling. I shall always love you. But I've known all along that Rebecca would win in the end.
No, she hasn't won. No matter what happens now, she hasn't won.
Hello? Hello? Frank? Who? Colonel Julian? Yes. Well, tell him I'll meet him there as soon as I possibly can.
What's happened?
Colonel Julian called. He's the chief constable of the county. He wants to know if I could possibly have made a mistake about that other body.
The body they had found in the boat was identified as Rebecca De Winter. There had to be an inquest, of course. Maxim was calm. Almost too calm. I think that frightened me even more.
I'm sorry to drag you back, Mr. De Winter, for further questioning, but you've heard the statement of the boat builder, Mr. Tabb. I wonder if you could help us in any way.
I'm afraid not.
The holes in the planking were evidently made from the inside. Can you think of a reason for that?
Well, of course I can't think of any reason.
Then since Mrs. De Winter went sailing alone, are we to believe that she drove those holes herself?
You may believe whatever you like.
Can you enlighten us as to why Mrs. De Winter should have wanted to end her own life?
I know of no reason whatsoever.
Mr. De Winter, however painful it may be, I'll have to ask you a very personal question. Were relations between you and the late Mrs. De Winter perfectly happy? Once again, were relations between you and...
I won't stand for this any longer. And you might as well know.
No, Maxim,
Oh, Mrs. De Winter! We'll adjourn until after luncheon.
Darling, are you all right? Let me take you outside.
Very foolish of me, fainting like that.
Hello.
Maxim, it's Fidel.
And how does the bride find herself today?
What do you want, Fidel?
How are you, Max? I was rather worried about you when I heard about the inquest. That's why I came down.
I'm touched by your solicitude, but if you don't mind...
My guess is they'll turn in a verdict of suicide. That is, of course, unless something unforeseen occurs.
What do you mean?
Well, I have a strong feeling that before the day is out, somebody's going to make use of that rather expressive, though old-fashioned term, foul play.
Go on.
You see, Max, I find myself in a rather awkward position. You've only got to read this note to understand. It's from Rebecca. She wrote it to me the day she died.
What makes you think that note would interest me?
Oh, I'm not going to bother you with the contents now, but I can assure you that it's not the note of a woman who intends to drown herself the same night. You know, Max, I've often wondered what it would be like to retire to the country, have a nice little place with a few acres of shooting. I've never figured out what it would cost a year, but I'd like to talk to you about it.
Darling, Mr. Favell and I have a little business transaction on hand. I think we'd better conduct it over at the inn. They may have a private room there.
Maxim.
Are you all right now, my dear?
Yes, but
Frank will be here in a moment. Ask him to find Colonel Julian. Then bring them both over to the inn immediately. Come on, Favell. Let's go. Colonel Julian, this is Mr. Favell.
Oh, I know, Colonel Julian. We're old friends, aren't we?
Good morning.
Well, since you're old friends, I assume you also know that Colonel Julian is head of the police here. I think he might be interested to hear your proposition, Favell.
I don't know what you mean. I only want to see justice done, Colonel. The evidence suggested certain possible theories concerning Rebecca's death. One of them, of course, is suicide. Now, I have a little note here which puts that possibility quite out of court. Will you read it, Colonel?
Jack, darling, I've just seen the doctor and I'm going to Manderley right away. I shall be at the cottage all this evening and shall leave the door open for you. I have something terribly important to tell you. Rebecca.
Well, does that look like the note of a woman who had made up her mind to kill herself? Now come, Colonel, as an officer of the law, don't you feel that there are some slight grounds for suspicion?
Of murder?
What else?
It is blackmail, pure and simple.
Blackmail's not so pure nor so simple, Max. Mr. Favell, perhaps you can provide us also with a motive.
Oh, I knew you were going to bring that up, Colonel. Yes, I'll supply that too. Will you come in, Mrs. Danvers? Oh, thank you. Colonel Julian, Mrs. Danvers. I believe you know everyone else, Danny.
Mrs. Danvers, there are a few questions.
No offense, Colonel, but I think if I put this to Danny, she'll understand it more easily. Danny, who was Rebecca's doctor?
Mrs. De Winter always had Dr. McLean from the village.
Now, you heard I said Rebecca's doctor. In London, we know that Rebecca went to a doctor in London on the last day of her life. Who was it?
I don't know.
Oh, I understand, Danny. You're trying to defend her, but that's what I'm doing.
Mrs. Danvers, it has been suggested that Mrs. De Winter was deliberately murdered.
Murdered?
There you have it in a nutshell, Danny. But there's one more thing you want to know. The name of the murderer. George Fortescue Maximilian de Winter. Well, Danny.
There was a doctor, Mrs. De Winter, sometimes went to him privately.
What was his name?
Dr. Baker, 165 Gold Hawk Road, Shepherd's Bush.
There you are, Colonel. There's where you'll find your motive. He'll tell you why Rebecca went to him, to confirm the fact that she was going to have a child. A sweet, curly-headed little child. She told Max about it, and so, like the gentleman of the old school that he is, he killed her.
Maxim, I'm afraid we shall have to question this Dr. Baker.
I'm ready to leave now, if you wish.
You're still sure you've never had a patient by the name of Rebecca De Winter, Doctor?
Never, Colonel Julian. Oh. Here. Here are all the appointments for that day. Ross, Campbell, Steddle, Perino, Danvers, Matthews.
Danny, what the devil?
What was that last name? Did you say Danvers?
Yes, Mr. De Winter. I had a Mrs. Danvers for 3 o'clock.
What did she look like? Can you remember?
Yes, I can remember. She was a very beautiful woman, tall, dark, exquisitely dressed.
Rebecca.
The lady must have used an assumed name, Dr. Baker.
Is that so? Well, this is a surprise. I'd known her for some time.
What was the matter with her?
My dear sir, there are certain ethics.
Could you supply a reason, Dr. Baker, for Mrs. De Winter's suicide?
For her murder, you mean. She was going to have a child, wasn't she? Come on, out with it.
No. No, she was not, Mr. Favell. But she was very seriously ill.
She was not going to have a child.
That was what she thought. But my diagnosis was quite different. She wanted the truth, and I told her she had only a few months to live.
A few months?
Perhaps even less. There was nothing that could be done. There was nothing she could do except wait.
Did she say anything when you told her?
She smiled in a queer sort of way, and oh yes, I remember she said something that struck me as rather peculiar at the time. When I told her it was a matter of months, she said, "Oh no, doctor, not that long."
Thank you, Doctor. You've been very kind. You've told us all we wanted to know. I should like to have a talk with you, Mr. Favell.
I didn't know.
Will I be needed any further at the inquest, Colonel Julian?
No, I can see to it that you are not troubled any further.
Thank you, Colonel. Frank.
Yes?
There is something that you do not know.
Oh, no. No, there isn't.
Yes, there is. I didn't kill her, Frank. But I know now that when she told me about the child, she wanted me to kill her. She lied on purpose. She foresaw the whole thing. That's why she stood there laughing. And when she...
Don't think about it anymore. What's the matter, Maxim? Why did you stop?
What time is it?
It must be 3 or 4. Why?
Look over there at the sky. Over that way. It can't be the dawn breaking over there.
Hardly. Perhaps it's the northern lights, but it's in winter you can see them, isn't it?
They aren't the northern lights. That's Manderley. It's burning.
Oh!
Hurry! Go find Mrs. De Winter. Where is she? Where is she?
Maxim! Maxim, here!
Oh, darling.
Oh, thank heaven you've come back to me.
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm all right. But Mrs. Danvers, she's gone mad. She set the fire. She said she'd rather destroy Manderley than see us happy here.
Well, there she is. At the window. The West Wing.
Maxim, she'll be killed. She'll... Oh no! The roof is collapsing! Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again. As I stood there, hushed and still, I could swear that the house was not an empty shell, but lived and breathed as it had long ago. But Manderley is no more. And we are happy now, Maxim and I. For all our fears and sufferings lie buried in its ruins.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alfred Hitchcock once again. If you enjoyed this Newton Theatre Company program, help support additional ones, as do our community sponsors, the Village Bank, Wegmans, the Newton Cultural Council, and your neighbors who are already friends of NTC. You too can become a friend with a donation on our website, www.newtontheatrecompany.com. There you can sign up for our mailing list and hear about future Zoom radio plays, like our next Zoom radio play, All About Eve, the classic 1950 portrait of what comes from the collision of ambition, jealousy, and an intense love of the stage. Rebecca Tonight was directed by Melissa Bernstein with technical support from Bernie Bernstein. And Neil Miller composed and performed the original score. Our incredible cast was as follows. Sarah Brooke Vanneman was our narrator. Elliot Purcell was Maxim De Winter. Gina Hooper was Mrs. Van Hopper and Colonel Julian. Linda Getz was Mrs. Danvers. Maggie Kernan was Jack Favell. I'm Paul Victor Walsh, also known tonight as Alfred Hitchcock. Frank Crowley, Ben, and Dr. Baker, and the coroner, saying, everyone stay healthy. And now we return you to the beautiful night music of Neil Miller to play you out into your summer nights.